Okay, well, welcome everybody to this group session on professionalism and employability. I'm Paul Mitchard. I'll be your moderator today, and I've asked first of all if I would draw my co-panelists' attentions to the housekeeping rules that are up there on the screen, trying to keep our presentations to 15 minutes and leave a bit of time for questions. The way that we will proceed is that I'm making the opening presentation. I'm talking about professionalism as part of legal education, which I think follows on very much from what Jane Howard was just talking about. And in fact, he was kindly asked me one of the questions that's going to help me a little bit in my case. I'm then followed by Dr. Simon Bruman and Ms. Sarah Stirk, who are going to talk about reflective practice in legal education. Are we missing an opportunity to give forward-thinking space to law students? Then Professor Fernando Diaz-Simoes, Academic Bias in International Investment Law. Professor Royal Raj S., Professionalism in Law, Men in Black, Do We Really Know Who We Are? And then Mr. Alex Nicholson, last but not least, on the value of a law degree, a perspective from UK providers. So I'm going to share with you my PowerPoint on this, hopefully. So, professionalism was part of legal education. Now, I am careers director here at CUHK Law. I was a lawyer in private practice. I was a partner in various law firms. I ended up in a US law firm practicing in London and then Hong Kong. So I've seen the way that students have developed, the way that they've come for interviews, the way they've been prepared for applying for jobs, for internships, and then for training contracts. And to some extent, I've seen the same process at the bar through colleagues. And so my experience doesn't come through research. It comes through day-to-day practice as a lawyer, and then helping students in their applications for jobs in my role here. And I thought I'd start off by just analyzing what we mean by professionalism. It's not an easily defined term. There are certain international professional norms that one can identify, and I'll come back to that in a moment. I would also say there are certain standards expected in international legal practice. So much of what is now transnational law, transnational transactions involves standards which lawyers accept. They will follow as between the different countries, civil and common law. There are certain national laws bearing on professional standards. Here in Hong Kong, the Legal Practitioners Ordinance, for example, tend to deal with very basic bedrock standards. Then there are the professional bodies like the Law Society of England and Wales and the Law Society of Hong Kong. They require more detailed professional standards. And then there are certain professional behavioral norms, and that's where my focus will mainly lie in this short presentation today. Behavioral norms, just behaving as a professional should. And this might well be described as the non-legal aspects of vocational training. So what are the international professional standards? Well, first of all, I would say commitment to the rule of law, something shared by lawyers across the world. The whole basis for being a lawyer and practicing in a jurisdiction is you commit to the rule of law. And then these days, also a new body of law, which sometimes requires you to act against your own client's interests, which is compliance with the recognized reporting standards we now have in the anti-money laundering and the counter-terrorism financing regulations, for example. And then, as I mentioned, the globally recognized standards, and these are best set out in the IBA International Principles on Conduct for the Legal Profession. And these are quite detailed, but I've just picked out here a small group of them, which are the more general terms: independent, unbiased advice and representation, honesty, integrity, and fairness, no conflicts of interest, and then preserving confidentiality of a client's affairs, and then something to what I've said about AML and terrorist financing, putting the client's interests as being paramount. But what other behavioral norms will apply? Now, I would say, building on those basic principles. Personal integrity is something expected from all lawyers in practice. Professional demeanor, I would say, looking and responding and behaving in a professional manner. Personal conduct, consistent, compatible with being a professional. This involves these days also, we look at this in terms of non-discriminatory behavior, no sexual discrimination, no race discrimination. Cultural awareness, being aware that other laws from other jurisdictions may have different expected practices that you need to observe. Office etiquette, behaving in the office in a seemly and professional manner. And I think also behavioralism extends to communication and management relations skills. And certainly in my time as a recruiter, looking at when I'm interviewing students from university, how are they going to look when they're in the office? How are they going to behave? How are they going to communicate with clients? How are they going to manage the practice? So effective communication I put up there as being an important aspect of professionalism, both oral and written, being able to express yourself across a table, by Zoom these days, as we have to do, but also in writing. And that is tested by many law firms at the application stage. Leadership, organizational skills, and team working ability, these are key behavioral skills. And those of you who know about this will understand that HR staff in some of the bigger, and even now some of the more medium-sized law firms, are themselves trained in looking out for evidence of these skills from the CV and tested in interview, whether it's a real live interview or a Zoom interview. Advocacy, and this doesn't mean just being able to stand up in court, but it also means being able to advance your client's case in a meeting, and there are techniques around advocacy that need to be learned and taught. And I remember actually when I was in one of the Magic Circle firms as a new lawyer, being told, when you go into a room, you sit around a table and there are chairs with an adjustable height. You should always put your chair to the highest level. And that's all part of the skill of presenting your client's case. Negotiation skills, not something you would readily think of as being part of professionalism, but actually, even if you're doing property law or you're doing contract law, litigation, whatever it is, there are not many areas of law where some element of negotiation isn't required. But I think that professionalism goes further than that. In terms of what law firms look for outside of the pure academic criteria by which they examine their candidates. Problem solving, right? Some firms will test these. There are various tests which they've all got posh names, but there are various tests now for seeing how good individuals are at assessing a problem, being able to come up with a solution, not necessarily a legal problem. Commerciality, really important. One of the Magic Circle firms came here to CUHK Law a couple of years ago, and they put up some slides about what do we expect from our applicants for training contracts. And commerciality featured very, very highly in that. In fact, I had to point out that they'd left off legal ability from their list of criteria, which they smiled at. But it just shows you how important it is these days to have lawyers who've got an ability to see the problem as not just simply a matter of law, but in its full commercial context. Awareness of key aspects of business and finance. I know that certainly at least one firm was telling me the other day that they send our students on a course, I think it's an online course, when they do their internship, they send them on to do a course on business and finance so that they are able to deal with the legal aspects in the knowledge of the underlying transactional basis. And then awareness of issues concerning the business of law. This is knowing about how partnerships operate, knowing about the internal structure of law firms, management, but also trends in legal practice. Really important. We live in a fast-changing world today, and it is so important as part of the professional element of the practice of a lawyer to be following the trends, but also in recognizing, where is the change going? Professor Susskind was talking about, where are we going to be? Things are changing very rapidly, and managing that change is so important. Otherwise, your firm can be on the rocks. So I think, I would say this is all part of professionalism, and along with that, client care, knowing how to look after the clients, keep the clients for the firm, obviously very important for your income in the longer term. And then, as a number of people have mentioned today, use of technology in the delivery of legal services. Again, it's a non-academic skill. It's a part of vocational training, and I think also a part of professionalism, knowing how to use technology in order to provide the services that you need for your clients. So why is learning about professionalism important? Well, simple answer, because most of our students, and I speak here for CUHK Law, but this is true, of course, widely, because most of them will start in legal practice where professional standards apply. And we've got a little pie chart that we use and update every year, showing where our students go when they leave here. And 79%, I think, if this is the 2017-18, but the similar figures throughout the last 5 years, right? 79% go to trainee solicitors, 9.4% pupil barristers. Some will go into government, some will go into business, and some will go to further studies, and then others, not sure. But that gives you a figure of at least 90% of our students who are going into the business of law, and to whom these issues are important. And I would add to that clients expect professionalism from lawyers. I've acted for clients around the world in different places. It doesn't matter. The clients from the north of China running coal mines, they want to see professionalism from their lawyers. And when your lawyer is working in a group of other lawyers, they want to see your lawyer is up there maintaining the same standards. So where does this lead us? The thing, as I said to you, having interviewed many dozens of applicants over the years for jobs in law firms, you are bound in your interview, at the time of the interview, actually at the time when the students are doing internships and also during their training contract period, you're looking all the time at whether they are going to meet these standards of professionalism that I referred to. And I would say, even that outside that 90%, there are not many roles in the law where these issues are not important. If you're going into legal education, then obviously you need to be aware of what you need to provide to your students, as Professor Howells was alluding to. So how should we teach professionalism? Well, at the moment, here at least, I can only speak for here, but here it's done largely through career support, through my department, preparing students for their job interviews, helping them to prepare for training for their internships, which is the opportunity to apply for a training contract. In alumni sharing and alumni mentoring, we have a system here where the students can link into alumni who can act as a mentor. But also as part of legal education, and obviously this is what the subject matter of this section is about. But there's a question mark, and I asked Professor Howells about the position now in England and Wales, where there is going to be an exam requiring the finance and business skills to be covered, advocacy and communication skills, client care and professional standards will all be mandatory in the UK. So given the importance of the concept, as I've described it, really, of employability, this is what happens in the interview, given the importance of professionalism at the employability stage, at the testing stage, most law students are going to need vocational training. The interviews for the internship places that lead to training contracts for lawyers, they happen in the penultimate degree year. So the students really need to be showing those skills at that stage in their career. And some might say, after that it's too late. If they've missed out at that point, the interviewers find that they don't really meet the necessary standards, then it's too late. They won't get a position in the kind of firm they want. And this was something in May 2018, the Hong Kong Standing Committee for Education, Legal Education and Training recognized by saying that the law faculty should consider how to prepare students to understand and engage with law and legal practice, and that the principles of legal ethics and professionalism should be introduced at the academic stage. They recognize the significance of this issue. And obviously there isn't time now to go into this, but one looks at the United States, or the various bars there, like the New York bar, look at the extent to which they now require professional skills to be part of the academic process. Australia, the same, and England and Wales, we just heard about. And so finally, what is the future for professionalism? Well, the provision of legal services is changing for sure. We now have increasingly alternative legal service providers coming on the scene, taking away some of the bread and butter work of lawyers. The use of technology for working and communication, online social media protocols and netiquette is all becoming part of life now. But even in this tech-dominated world, and if you take nothing else away from what I'm saying, believe this, that clients still expect certain standards of professional behavior from lawyers. They may engage with you on social media and whatever, but they still look to lawyers to demonstrate professional behavior. And I would say, and I believe this very firmly, that there's actually a higher premium now on interpersonal skills, because so much of that drudge work of the old days, some of the legal drafting, the guys doing the conveyancing work, so much of that will now be done by AI, will be done by other processes that can be mechanized. Okay, so in conclusion then, I would say employability in the business of law is the key objective. It must be the key objective of the vast majority of the law students, as we've seen from my pie chart. And therefore, I would say, and this is very much my own view, not necessarily shared by all academic colleagues, preparing students for professional life should therefore be a principal objective of legal education. And this requires legal knowledge, but also the vocational professional training that I've referred to. And as I've just said, I think this is even more important in an age of technological advance, and that is supported very much by developments in other jurisdictions. All right, so now if I can just turn over for any questions, if you'd like to just send in any questions you have. So I've got a question here from Mr. Stephen Gallagher asking us, in terms of professional life, so is this important for students who don't want to go to law? Well, for a start, Stephen, I mean, I have to say that only a very small proportion, as we've seen, of our students don't go to law. So even if this weren't the case, I still don't think it detracts from the main point that I've been making. There are a very small number of students who move into areas based on anecdotal research that we've done, which are kind of quasi-law positions, such as working in compliance, for example, or going into consultants where they do investigations work. But all of that involves, to some extent or another, working with lawyers, working with legal standards, and in an environment where professional skills actually play a part. So I think, and as I've said, for those who go into academia, the same thing, that you are going to be working with students who are going to want to know about these things, these elements, which are important for their future career. And one of the most important functions the academic staff here play, so far as I'm concerned, is they're constantly telling students to come to my seminars and pay attention to the resources that we supply, because we've hopefully done a good job in making known exactly what it is we can assist with, and I think that's recognized. So any other questions? All right, well, our time is now up, or at least my time for my session is now up.